Welcome to No More Mondays, the podcast that helps you navigate career challenges through the wisdom of professionals who have been at the same crossroads. I'm your host, Angie Callan, and I welcome you to join me each week as I chat with leaders, entrepreneurs, and employees who are here to share practical, tactical advice and some inspiration on how they arrived at career satisfaction. From job searching and career changes to going out on your own, we're breaking down barriers and providing actionable takeaways to help you take charge of your Mondays and ditch the Sunday blues. Welcome to the No More Mondays movement. Hello, everyone, and welcome to No More Mondays. I am your host, Angie Callan, and one of the things I love about hosting a podcast are the interesting conversations I get to have with people who are doing some pretty amazing things. So I'm excited to introduce you to Karina Schulz. Karina's willingness to be vulnerable about the challenges she's faced personally and professionally through her journey with a mental health disorder will give you a totally new perspective on overcoming obstacles. She's a new author and just penned her first book on that exact topic. And I'm excited to hear more about that, while we also learn how Karina rose above her circumstances to carve out a path of growth, positivity, and impact. Karina, welcome to No More Mondays.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is going to be a really cool conversation for a lot of people. And we're going to kick things off with, tell us a little bit about yourself. So give everybody just a little bit of your background so we've got some context as we dig a little bit more into your journey.
So I was born in San Diego, California, born and raised. Love San Diego. Highly recommend it to anyone.
I love San Diego. I highly recommend it too.
Gorgeous. And I'm actually a first generation American. My mom is from Austria and my dad is from Peru. So I grew up in a tricultural household, which also bred a lot of interest in multicultural activities, traveling, learning new languages, understanding other people's cultures. I then went up to LA for university and graduated in only 3 years. After that, I was like, I need to get out. And as I just mentioned, per influence from my parents, I was definitely like, okay, I need to go to a different country. So I spent a few months in Europe first, right after college, then decided, okay, nope, I'm going to move down to Peru, and was there for a few years until the pandemic hit, which put a little bit of a damper on some travels, but then continued traveling once things were a little bit safer and I was able to get tested, and have been traveling Latin America for quite some time, working remote. And yeah, like you mentioned, in terms of the mental disorder, when I was 18, going on 19, I was talking with my therapist and we did discover that I had bipolar disorder.
Discover was exactly the word I'm thinking. You discovered.
It kind of just all clicked. It made sense when we came to that realization. And I was like, oh, that's why I felt things my whole life. That's why I was different. And so weaving in the bipolarity and getting to know more of how it works, doing research myself. And instead of fearing it, I just tried to take it head on. And I said, okay, like this is just something I have. How can I use it to my benefit? Which is what my book is about. I just finished it. It's still in editing phase, so it will be published by the end of the year. So I'm super excited. But it goes really into how to weave in both professionally and personally the benefits of having mental disorders. So instead of just looking at the negative side and being depressed and like, oh, this is what I have and nothing I can do about it, it's saying, okay, yes, I have it and there is nothing I can do about it. So let me at least use it and get the most out of it that I can, because there is nothing else I can do about it. So yeah, it's a little intro to what I'm up to at the moment.
All right, we're going to dig into a bunch of there's a lot of little things there I want to explore further, just because I think that one of the reasons I love that you're willing to be vulnerable and very open around how bipolar disorder has been a positive in your life is because we know there is such a stigma around mental health disorders, and you're, at the center of trying to debunk that. And we can play a little small part here. So I'm curious, you mentioned, the late teen years is popular. That's a very common time for that discovery to occur. So I feel like it would be good context for everybody to understand kind of how it manifested itself. How did it appear? And almost some of what were some of the negative things that came up and the challenges that you faced that then you were able to turn around?
Great question. Very heavy question as well. So I had ups and downs throughout my whole teen years and throughout, late middle school, high school time. I really didn't understand what was happening. I, at one point, thought I was a hypochondriac. So I was like, I just think I have everything. And I had convinced myself that that was real. And then it wasn't 2 months later, which is very typical of bipolar. And I was having a conversation with my mom the day before my high school graduation, coincidentally. And she mentioned that there were other mental disorders in my family. And she's like, oh, by the way, like, I've known since you were 3 years old that you might have bipolar. And I was like, you didn't tell me? Like, what? Why would you not tell me? And she's like, oh, like, I didn't want to ruin your life. I didn't want you to think that you were anything less. I'm like, but it would have helped.
Yeah, it's like that was totally well intentioned to the point. It's like,
Yeah.
let's not predispose you to the assumptions you'll make about yourself if you know, but also that it made everything make sense.
Exactly. And so that's when I was just like, oh, like maybe this is something. So that when I started college later that year, I went to the mental health center at my university and started really working on it with a therapist, seeing if it was something that was real, taking into consideration everything that I had felt over the years, how I was acting in the present, the way I thought and things like that. And then it was like, oh, yep, that's what it is. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. So that's how I figured out. And then there are obviously the manic periods and the depressive periods, the difficult parts, like clearly the depressive periods. Like it's not something you like want to be in. It's not like I'm saying, oh, everyone should be bipolar because it's awesome and it's just like the best thing in the world at all times. Obviously, there are those depressive moments where things get really tough, and it's not always anything that's life threatening every time. But when a wave does come around, you want to be in bed for 16 hours a day and you really don't want to do anything. And so the way that I got over it, or the way that I am trying to use it to my benefit, is recognizing that during a depressive period, I just constantly tell myself it's just hormones. It's just hormones. I can't do anything about it. Like it's just my brain. Just write it out. Like it's not really me. And then during the manic episodes, which is where I only need to sleep 4 hours a night and I am fully energized and thoughts are going wild and I am just all over the place.
You're a machine at that point.
Yeah, like I'm on top of the world. I'm just awesome. I am unstoppable. Like every incredible adjective you can think of, like that's what a manic episode feels like. What I realize is that during those manic periods, I'm more creative. I'm more tuned to planning out a lot of different projects and like looking at broad spectrum, being more introspective, being more proactive. So what I did, or what I do for the past few years, is every time I feel that it's coming on, I'm like, okay, I need to use this to my benefit and say, I'm going to plan out everything that I need to do for the next few months. It doesn't come in regular waves. So it's not like, oh, I know exactly on this date I'm going to, be manic. And then on this date I'm going to be depressed.
But you plan out how you're going to utilize the next one in advance.
Exactly.
Oh,
and
that's
so,
amazing.
Yeah. So during my manic episodes, what I'll do is, like very detailed either work or professional plan on everything I'm going to do and then how I'm going to do it. If you've ever heard of SMART goals,
Yes.
it's very similar to that in the sense where I'm extremely specific. I note out exactly what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to do it, why I'm going to do it, when I'm going to be doing it, just like very detailed. Like every single day I need to do this, and every day or every week I need to do this, and this is the outcome I'm expecting by this time. And I'm also a lot more creative. So I just jot down all of my ideas for everything I want to do because I'm like, I know I'm not going to be thinking about this down the line. And so when a depressive period comes up, I know that I don't have to try and be more creative at that point. I just kind of piggyback off of what I did during a manic period and say, okay, I told myself that all I need to do every day is X. And so then I do it kind of mindlessly. And it's not like I'm thinking like, but what will this lead to? Because I've already done the thinking part. And I've weaved that into both the professional and personal areas. So in the professional area, I work in sales, and sales in itself is a very bipolar job, just for anyone that's looking to get into it. But I absolutely love sales. And there's a lot of prospecting, follow-ups. You have to create marketing campaigns. You have to really like get out there. And so I do all of that, but I'll channel those times, like either just normal or manic periods, to plan out everything, how I'm going to be doing marketing campaigns, like try and automate as much of the prospecting process as I can, and then just go down, just kind of ride out the wave when it's a depressant. I'm like, okay, all I need to do is this like daily, and just push through. So that's kind of on the professional end. And then on the personal end, I have, and I mentioned a lot of this in my book, of random projects I start, but then actually got a lot of fruit out of them. So a few years back, I was like, okay, I want to do my master's in Brazil. Why? Because I don't know. And
you don't need a reason. Just go do it.
Yeah, like, to be completely honest, it's because I figured out that master's programs in Brazil were free for foreigners. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to pay for my master's.
Hey, everybody out there, there's a practical tip for you. You can go travel and get your master's program.
Exactly. And so what I did for the application process, I kind of kept just putting it off and putting it off. And all of a sudden, one day I got just this hit, and I was like, this is the moment that I was waiting for. And in an entire weekend, like it was Saturday and Sunday, like the whole days, I wrote the entire application. This was like a 4,000 word essay about myself. Then it was a 2,000 word essay about the thesis that I wanted to be studying. It was also getting all of my recommenders. It was filling out all of the different like paperwork, getting everything translated. Like it was the entire process, which usually, like, for example, with even applying to my undergrad, like it took months. And I know other people take months to do these things. And I was like, nope, in a weekend. That's it.
I mean, like, quite literally, if you were standing at a crossroads, that's where you took a hard left and were like, here's where I'm going, and you committed to it.
Exactly. And then I got in and I got a full scholarship, which was cool. And then because of COVID, I couldn't go. But that's a different story. And then
let me go. I want to keep going down this track, but I want to circle back to that very like practical kind of, let's say, coping mechanism that you've created for yourself, because there are some, I think, very practical takeaways there, and even tactical advice that anybody could take and apply to their lives. Because if you can do this while managing the extreme highs and lows that bipolarism creates, what excuse do the rest of us have, folks? So the learning experience here is we all have highs and lows. They just aren't manic and depressive quite so much. But if you can know when you work best, you can do exactly what Karina just talked about, where you are putting your creative work or your hardest work into the times when you're in the flow. That way you give yourself almost some permission to do what just needs to be done at the times when you're not as effective. That could be across a day, that could be across a week, that could be across a month, that could be across a season. But it's a really practical way to stay accountable to yourself and manage the ebbs and flows of energy that we all have. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
I
appreciate it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Libsyn. Do you have an idea for a great new podcast? You can bring your idea to life and start your podcast today with Libsyn. Our podcast has been on Libsyn for 2 years now, and we love it. Libsyn has everything you need to plan, launch, and grow your own podcast. Libsyn provides some of the best resources created by expert podcasters who will show you everything you need to know, like what equipment you should use, how to record great audio, how to get your show onto Apple Podcasts and other popular platforms, and much more. Plus, as a friend of No More Mondays, when you sign up with Libsyn, you get your first month of podcast hosting for free. There has never been a better time than right now for you to start podcasting. Visit Libsyn.com and use the code FRIEND, FRIEND. That's Libsyn, LIBSYN.com, and use the code FRIEND, FRIEND, to get started and create your podcast today. And now, back to the show.
So I'm bummed that Brazil didn't get to happen. But I also do like that you have figured out how to not only live your best life despite, which is awesome because a lot of people don't live their best life because of, but you've also figured out how to work in a way that's going to support the life that you want to have and giving you that freedom and flexibility. Before we came online, everybody, we were going through Karina's travel schedule, and it's got like 7 stops on it in the next like month or two. So you've definitely figured out how to support yourself, which is where outsourcing with Karina came from, right?
Correct. I did figure it out pretty early, I would say. So a year before the pandemic was even a thought in most people's minds, I was working an office job. And so I asked my boss if I could go work predominantly from home and only come in when necessary because I was working for the US anyway, or working in the US market anyway. And he said no. So I quit. I started applying to other jobs, and I very quickly, it was only around 3 weeks, and then I already was on board on my next job, which was an international company that was totally fine with me working from home. There I was able to really manage my own schedule. I was really able to organize it, and I got a lot more benefit from that, and the company got a lot more benefit from me because I was working the most that I could on some days, because like also sometimes the 8 hours can be limiting if that's one of the days where you're on fire and you're doing it and they're like, okay, well, 8 hours now you have to clock out, or because we don't want to pay you overtime. And it's like, what? Like,
oh yeah, and this is a message for managers out there, and I don't know what like flag we need to fly behind a plane in the sky for people to understand that when you give your staff the flexibility to work when they're best, you get better staff.
Yes, no, 100%. And that also means I never have to take as much time off of work. Like if your typical job will give you 2 to 3 weeks more or less of vacation time a year, like I usually never have to take most of that time because I'm still enjoying my life outside of work because I'm like, I'm in Colombia or I'm in Chile or I'm in Brazil. Like these are all places I've been to in the past few years. I still get that part of my personal life that I love so much and weave it into just, still working remote. And I'm still very professional in the sense that like I always make all of my meetings. I don't think I've ever missed a meeting in the past 2 years because I don't have to. I can always be available wherever I am. And then combining that in with like the bipolar, sometimes I need to be on the move. I need to be doing something, and flying around, seeing other things for me just complements my personality very much. And then of course, end effect is the business is actually getting a better yield from me because I am happy outside of work.
Real life digital nomad in the flesh here, guys. It's so fun. It's
yes.
such a trendy thing, but you have figured it out. Let's just to give a shameless plug for Karina. The work that she's doing is in the virtual assistant world. And for all of you who are fellow coaches or entrepreneurs out there, I will tell you firsthand how hard it is to find a good VA. So you need to write Karina's info down, keep this podcast in your back pocket because she's your resource for this. So tell us a little bit about outsourcing with Karina, and even a little bit of how it is to have that kind of like autonomy and kind of managing business while being bipolar.
Perfect. And yes, shameless plug. Virtual assistants, they can help with really anything from admin to finance to whatever else it may be. And I was previously working with a virtual assistant agency where the only services they offered were the specific ones to that agency. And afterwards, I branched out more into kind of me being an independent agent for multiple different agencies where I can offer a huge breadth of different types of services to my clients.
Yeah, you're a great resource for this. And we could do a whole show on Karina, what is a VA and how do you find a good one? So at the expense of not going down that rabbit hole, we'll just make sure that all of your information is in the show notes at nomoremonday.info. Let's switch gears for a second because I'm very excited that you are now an author. And I want to hear a little bit more about the book. I know it's not ready yet, but I would love to hear a little bit about the process. What's it called? How can we find it when it comes out later this year? So give us some info on that.
Perfect. So the process started, I would say 6 years ago when I started journaling and was like, I really want to be able to influence people. My purpose overall in the book is to show that it's okay to have any sort of mental disorder and to prove that you can still do anything. You might not do it the way that everyone else does it. And something I talk about so much in my book is just like, okay, like you guys did it one way and my way sounds whack, but it works.
Doesn't mean it doesn't work. Exactly.
It still works. And like, look at all the stuff I got out of it. And there's so many things I've done just because I was bipolar, like, applying to do a master's in Brazil. Like usually people wouldn't think about it. Now it's just like, yes.
Making the decision that quickly to just go for it. Oh, trust me, people will spend a year trying to decide whether or not to apply. So that's one of the superpowers is wins can be a positive thing.
Exactly. And having bipolar as a superpower is exactly how I outlined the entire book, taking into consideration, I did have some previous journals and I pieced those together and then pieced together just all of the other pieces of information that I wanted to share with people about my experience, about my mentality, about my failures and about my successes. And I put it all together in about, I want to say like 3 weeks. And then I started applying to publishers and then got accepted by 2 publishers that wanted to publish. And so then I chose one and will be going through the whole editing process, or I am going through the editing process with them.
That's amazing. Not that self-publishing isn't also legit, but there's a certain amount of credibility and validation that comes when a publisher picks you up. So,
yeah.
Yay!
Thank you. And to be completely honest and transparent, my original plan was to self-publish because I thought that I wouldn't be good enough for a publisher. And then I very quickly had to get rid of that idea. And I was like, come on, Karina, like publishers can help us so much.
Pat yourself on the back because, pushing through that self-limiting belief and that voice actually had this outcome that you didn't think was going to be there.
Exactly. And I applied to 18 publishers in total, and only 2 of them said like, okay, let's move forward. And that was really exciting. The title at the moment, because you also asked, I haven't 100% chosen the title yet, but something along the lines of that.
This has been a really cool conversation because to draw some parallels, there's really good, practical, actionable advice throughout this, from having SMART goals so that you have a long-term or at least a medium-term plan of actions and activities to be productive is amazing. The idea of pushing yourself outside of your self-limiting beliefs to go try something new and seeing the outcome that can come from it is a huge message to send to any of you who are tuning in and you're in the job market, because that's an area that people definitely kind of undershoot themselves. And journaling, side note, is another awesome action that's in here. So there's a lot of really practical recommendations and advice throughout this whole conversation. Karina, I love it so much. But we're going to get a few more out of you before we wrap things up.
No worries. Go for it.
So we play a little game called Rapid Fire Recommendations, but rarely is it that rapid. It's just another chance to get a few more pearls of wisdom out of all of our guests. So the first one is probably going to be hard for you, but what's your most memorable travel destination?
Oh, Morocco, 100%.
That was easy. You got to give us a quick sentence on why.
The culture was such a huge culture shock for me. I remember being in the first hostel that I was in, and I asked the guy that was working at the hostel how old he was, and he said, I don't know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know how old you are? And he was like, well, in my culture, it doesn't matter. It just matters how you act. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a practical piece of advice for every American out there. That's a great, there you go. Go to Morocco, go to the desert in Morocco and learn how to supersede your age.
And then, And then, sorry, just real quick, another thing I absolutely loved about them, I was taking a trip in a van out to the middle of the Sahara, and there were just like random houses in the middle of the Sahara, just like one house, like not even like a group of houses. And we would keep passing them like every few miles. There's just like this painting on the doors of the houses that was the same on every single house. And it was huge. And I was like, hey, like, well, what does that mean? And it's a sign in the Berber language, which is between Algeria and Morocco, where that culture is. And he's like, oh, it means free man or free person. And basically it means that if you go to that house is not at war and will invite anyone in to be hospitable, to help you. And I just absolutely love that mentality. And then I ended up getting it tattooed on my foot because
it was that impactful.
So Morocco.
So we know you've got one coming out, but give us another great book recommendation.
Okay, there's actually 3 books that I absolutely love and recommend to everyone. One is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I love it because he talks about just creating habits and stuff, which has helped me also a lot in the bipolar space. Then Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is absolutely amazing. A just random plug for him, like subscribe to his newsletter and follow him on LinkedIn. Everything that he writes about and posts is just so insightful, and Principles talks about both personal, your work life, and your personal life on really just the best characteristics of your personality that you should demonstrate always. And then the third one is Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And I recommend that one because it talks a lot about human tendencies, both interactions and mentality, which just gives you a lot more of an insight into why we do things the way we do. And so you can either modify your own actions for yourself or modify the way that you interact with other people. And I say modify because I don't want to say like change your personality, but you can always modify a little bit to make sure that the other person is also comfortable, and then you guys are both benefiting from the interaction.
Atomic Habits is on my top 25 list of recommendations on the Career Vendors website. So we're on the same page there. But the other 2, I will be adding to my book list.
Yes.
That's awesome. And then give us a podcast that you kind of faithfully listen to.
So I'm really into finances, so I don't know how like self-helpy this is, but it's Robin Hood Snacks. And it's a daily podcast for like anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes that just goes over what the stocks are doing.
Love it. Yeah, we've had other people who, because I mean, you can't support the life you want to have, and your career isn't very good if you're not financially stable. So smart. And of course, this is a show about Mondays. So what is the first word that comes to mind when I say Monday?
Energetic.
Tell me why.
Because I love Mondays, honestly. I think that Mondays, I mean, it's also interesting because per society, it's been ingrained in us that Mondays are bad and not to work, and like, oh, how bad it is that the weekend and the only fun part of my life ended. But Mondays are a great opportunity for you to restructure, for you to come in with full force. Like you've just had your time to rest and focus on yourself over the weekend. So come in and give it your all. And no one has told you anything bad yet, unless you were really unfortunate that day.
If all you do is say at 9:01 Monday morning, I haven't talked to anybody, which means it can't be bad yet. You're doing all right.
Yeah, there's nothing that has gone bad yet. But like Mondays are just this time to come in, and I've kind of had to adjust a little bit as well, because I wouldn't say that my schedule at the moment is like exactly like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Like there's a lot of times where on a Sunday I just sit down and, pop out some work that I need to do just because I happen to like need to do it that day, and for me that's fine. So I'm a lot more flexible with it and okay with it, and I don't adhere necessarily to like the Mondays at the start of the week. It's just like it happens to be where everyone else starts their week.
Well, and sometimes you're even in a new place by Monday morning, which always makes it kind of exciting. Yeah, there you go. You can be a digital nomad and have a good career at the same time, everybody. Karina, this is so awesome. I feel like you and I could just throw out really cool life recommendations all day long. And we're going to ask you for one more as we wrap things up. But before we do, I would love for you to let everybody out there know where they can find you. Is there a way that we can kind of follow along as you prepare to launch the book? Like, how can everybody follow your journey?
Perfect. The best place would be one of two, either on Instagram at Outsourcing with Karina or on LinkedIn, just Karina Schulz, and that's Schulz with no T.
We will, of course, link those to the show notes at nomoremondays.info. And of course, Karina and I will be linked up on LinkedIn. So you can find her and follow along, because I'm really excited about the book coming out, and we'll be sure to celebrate that with you when it happens. And as we wrap things up, I would love for you to let's top it off with one more piece of wisdom. What's your best piece of advice on what our listeners can do to get one step closer to career and life satisfaction?
Write down your goals.
So there, mic drop.
100%. It's the only thing that keeps you focused. And after reading hundreds of books, I'm a huge reader. They say over and over again, like, you can think it, and that's great if you're like, okay, I'm executing on things I'm thinking, but writing it down, physically writing it down, is life-changing.
Statistically speaking, it is proven to strengthen the goal because you are more tied to it in that act of writing, for sure.
Exactly.
Love it. Write it down, folks. Write it down. If there's one piece of advice you take away from this episode with Karina, write it down. Karina, thank you so much for joining us and for being part of the No More Monday movement. This has been awesome.
Thanks so much for having me, Angie.
You are so welcome. We always love hearing from people who have successfully navigated career crossroads, life challenges, and charted a path to success and fulfillment. And there's so much great advice here. I hope all of you took some notes and wrote a thing or two down. And also for all of you out there, I would love for you to subscribe to No More Mondays and leave us a 5-star rating. It's a huge help as we continue to inspire confident professionals with these great stories and great ideas on how to succeed. If you have comments or you want to leave feedback, guest suggestions, or you would like to access the show notes from today's episode, visit us online at nomoremondays.info. Thanks for joining us for another episode of No More Mondays. Tune in next week as we bring you more insights and actions to help you improve your professional life and find career satisfaction. Don't forget, visit us online at nomoremondays.info for all the details, show notes, and recommendations from this episode. No More Mondays, we drop new episodes every Wednesday. No More Mondays is brought to you by Career Benders, Inc. in partnership with executive producer Jane Durkee. For more information about career coaching, resume writing, personal branding, recruiting, and entrepreneurship coaching services, visit our website at careerbenders.com.